it's raining outside, and it is Thanksgiving. As you can tell, it's Thursday the 28th. This means it's the fourth Thursday in November, which therefore means that it is Thanksgiving. But Thanksgiving is one of the worst days for the weather to be as bad as it is. In this video, we're going to talk about why this rain is ultimately a good thing. However, why the timing of it is really bad, and why literally any other day would have been a better day. And before you ask me about snow, no, this is not going to turn to snow. We don't know when it's going to snow. If it's going to snow, we don't know any of that information. But I will post a billion things if snow actually looks likely. And if we can even eclipse our 23-24 snow total, then believe me, that's going to get attention from me. But we're not talking about snow right now. We're talking about, first of all, why this rain is helpful, but then also why the timing of it is very bad. And I'm just going to do it when I'm outside and not pull up any data, because I want to save that for like a fall 2024 recap, considering how historical this is going to be. Likely one of our driest falls on record. And possibly the driest fall on record for parts of Long Island. Now, first of all, I do want to preface this by saying that New York City is no longer in line to, receive its driest fall on record. They needed 4 inches of rain exactly 4 inches of rain for it to match 1908, and they've exceeded that so far. We saw, it wasn't pretty, but we saw New York City get up to 4.08 inches of rain, and it's raining today, so they will not receive their driest fall on record. October 2024 is the driest month on record, but November has done just enough to even counter one of our driest Septembers on record, because September was also dry, even though it was not historically dry, though it was for some areas. So the main reason why we need this rain is because our area is in severe drought, and even after our most recent lashing, it still is in severe drought. So, you have to go back a while for this one. And I'm going to give a long history, but I'm going to keep it short until we get to like the start of the autumn. So, basically, after our fourth driest March on record, and in April it started off really wet, it then turned really dry for the final 26 days. And May was dry at first, although we did eventually have isolated severe storms at the end of the month. Now in June, again, June started off seemingly wet with that big storm on the 6th. However, since then, again, there wasn't really consistent rains. There was just big isolated downpours. And some areas saw one of their driest Junes on record. And when you realize that with the intense sunlight and a strong sun angle, as well as the fact that it was the fourth hottest June on record, with several days exceeding 90 degrees during the month, you begin to realize that that we really needed the rain, and how bad it was that we couldn't get that much rain. And July started off, in the same way. Abnormally dry conditions began to expand after you had multiple days that exceeded 90 degrees and you had little rain. Yes, there were some storms on the weekend of the 4th of July, but that's not really going to do all that much. The 13th and 17th, though, did have soaking rainstorms, but then it was dry for another 2 weeks, although temperatures were a little bit lower. But still, you get to that point. August, however, is when drought relief finally arrived. You had big storms on the 2nd and 3rd, and some rain on the 4th, even though it wasn't in the severe storm variety. And then on the 6th, after all these hot days, you had another really big storm come through and cause flooding issues. The 7th, 8th, and 9th didn't see a ton of rain because Debbie moved to the west, but it still saw some rain and some opportunity for the grass to reprieve from the drought conditions. Then, on, after it dries up for a bit, the 17th, another storm moves through. It only brings drizzles. But we get historical flooding on the 18th. We see record rainfall at LaGuardia Airport on this day, and over 2 inches throughout the area, with some areas receiving 4 or 5. And this heavy rain continues into the 19th, and another evening storm does eventually cross through. However, this is where you have to realize how dry it gets. Big storms mostly miss the area on the 26th and 28th, and while New York City got 0.3 inches of rain on the 30th, other areas further east on Long Island got a quarter of that. The rain on the 30th was very spread out. September 7th, another storm comes through, but rainfall totals are again mostly limited to under a quarter of an inch, despite, relatively big storms that were crossing through the area. After that, it does not rain in our area for 15 weeks. Not 15 weeks, 15 days. So it felt like 15 weeks though. And on the 23rd, the rainfall that falls is very meager. New York City is not in line to receive its dry September on record, but it certainly looks like it could be a top 3 dry September on record. And here's the thing. Islip, on Long Island, only had a quarter inch of rain for the month. They finished with their dry September on record. However, we see rainfall amounts to the area varying, with many areas seeing over an inch of rain, thanks to a good rain at the end of the month. New York City receives 1.58 inches of rain, which means it's not even the top 20 driest September on record. We'll go through the more specific details of each climactic site when we review fall 2024 data, but basically, Helene's rains actually outperformed a bit from the 27th to the 29th. So even though, there's not a ton of rainfall before, and Long Island gets screwed out on the 29th, so they don't receive a lot, we do see significant rainfall that affects New York City, which helps to stave off drought conditions for a little bit. However, here comes October, the driest month on record. A trace of rain at Newark, 0.01 inches for the entire month at LaGuardia and JFK. Islip has 0.12 inches of rain, mostly due to a storm on the 7th that actually missed New York City, but it's still not enough. It's the driest month on record at all of these locations. Not the driest October, driest month on record. New York City goes 29 days without seeing any measurable rainfall. September 30th through October 28th, there is not a single, amount of measurable rain that falls in the city. Many other areas had a similar story. After a pretty dry September that was really bad in some areas, October just really etched up the drought. And at first it was not a catastrophically big deal, because temperatures through September and October were relatively moderated. We didn't see too many hot days. However, when temperatures began to soar into the 80s for a few days in late October, and humidity was still relatively low, it became a problem. Wildfires began to spread to the northeast, and this exacerbated throughout the end of October. Halloween and the start of November, more days hit the 80s. Unseasonably warm, record warm on some cases, and no rain in sight, considering that a storm that was supposed to bring a little bit of rain on November 1st only brings a trace. And temperatures are still really high with humidity not being that high. It's dangerous. It's bad. Now, on November 10th through the 11th, rain falls, but it's less than expected. It's only about 0.2 inches. It only helps the wildfire threat for one day, as temperatures are high on the 11th, but humidity is high. But when that drains on the 12th, and then we see the amount of wildfires that were caused. This does eventually begin to die down a little bit as containment efforts arose. However, again, we see, we see more of a, more dryness. Now, the 21st finally brought drought relief. Through the 21st and the 22nd, we saw over 2 inches of rain at Islip and Central Park. My location only saw about 1.7 inches of rain, but that's still a decent amount. We saw over 2 inches of rain in those areas. And the fact that it still was enough to save some areas from the driest fall on record. I think Islip is still in lock for it, but I'll have to see what that and some other sites are, because I'm not sure what the September totals were in some cases. It definitely helped. Then, 2 days ago, we saw more rain that dropped about 1/4 of an inch throughout the area in the morning. And now this. So, it went from us not being able to receive any rain to us likely in a 8-day period receiving 3 inches of rain. We have a wet period going for us. And it's very good that we can capitalize on our totals now, because the start of December looks dry, and it looks like there might not be any cold. Even though it'll be cold, there might not be any snow coming, or rain for that matter. So we could be in for another dry period, which is probably the last thing that anyone needs to hear. That being said, for it to rain on Thanksgiving is really bad, because pretty much everything is closed on Thanksgiving. And in our area, the JCC that is open on Christmas is closed on Thanksgiving. So Thanksgiving might actually be the worst day, in the sense that you have to go outside for everything. It's just like when it was raining during COVID in a way. During COVID, nothing was open, and so therefore you had to go outside even when the weather was poor. And trust me, there were a lot of days during COVID where the weather was poor. Even though 2020, the first half was dry, there were plenty of days where we saw, in April, where we saw lots of rain. And Black Friday, or, any day beforehand or any day after, it could have rained and it wouldn't have led to this big of an impact, because you can actually go outside. But now that even more shops and services are closing on Thanksgiving than ever before, there's nothing to do. You pretty much have to go outside. As I say that, I think the rain just significantly intensified. Just when I thought I was going to get a lull, it intensifies. So, the worst part is that this time it's going to rain specifically during the daylight hours, and once night comes, it's going to drop off. So, I don't know what is going to happen, but we'll just see how it goes.